Welcome. Thank you so much, Bertha. All right, let's get the show started. Adora.
Here.
Thank you. Alec.
I'm here, sorry.
Sounds good, thank you. Alyssa.
Here.
Ari.
Here.
Thank you. Brandon.
Here.
Brianna.
Here.
Amy.
Here.
Thank you. Carol.
Here.
Thank you. Cynthia. Cynthia. Erica.
Hi, Miss. I'm here.
Hi, Erica. Thank you. Jane.
Hi, Misa. I'm here.
Hi, Jane. Thank you. Jasmine.
Here.
Thank you. Jessica.
Hi, Misa. I'm here.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you. Johnny.
Hi, Misa. I'm here.
Hi, Johnny. Thank you so much. Judy.
Here.
Thank you. Juliana. Juliana. All right. Francesca.
Here.
Thank you. Marcus Robertson.
Here.
Thank you. Emma. Emma. Right. Keith.
Here.
Kelsey.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Kelsey. Mariana.
Here.
Mason. Miranda.
Here.
Thank you. Robbie.
Here.
Thank you. Saba.
Here.
Thank you. Wafa.
Here.
Thank you. Wesley.
Hello, I'm here.
Thank you. Kevin.
I'm here. Hi, Misa.
Hi, Kevin. LaShawn. Theodora. Zoe.
Here. Hi.
Hi, thank you. And Nee. Right, back to you, Wafa.
Awesome. Thank you, Misa. Next, I'm going to pass it to, oh my God, my order is all messed up. Jessica for Vincentian story.
Hi, everybody. So for today's Ascension story, we actually got a request to center and prioritize just like meditation and focusing ourselves. And I think this is very applicable to certain times. I feel like it would be remiss of me to not acknowledge that there's like so much uncertainty in the world, and that's caused by so many both internal and external reasons, internal and external, like to Nepal and just like the world in general. So this is me inviting everyone into a quick meditation. If this is new, it's like a tapping exercise, and I've only done it once. Hopefully it just helps us ground ourselves and like focus on ourselves, even just for a quick 2-3 minutes. So I will share my screen. This will be quick, don't worry.
called tapping, and we're going to
This would require just a little movement. So if you could join me and this person in the video, that would be great.
to tap on the feelings of being overwhelmed and stressed out. I'm Jodie Shield, and I'm author of my brand new book, Toolbox to Heal Your Soul. So just tapping on the outside edge of your left hand. And you're going to repeat after me now. Even though I feel stressed out and overwhelmed, I deeply and completely accept who I am and how I feel. Even though I feel stressed out and overwhelmed, I deeply and completely accept who I am and how I feel. Even though I feel stressed out and overwhelmed with all I have on, I deeply and completely accept who I am and how I feel. Take the hand you've been tapping on, 2 fingers, and tap on the beginning of either eyebrow. And we're going to shorten what we've just been saying. I'm stressed out and overwhelmed. Tapping on the side of the eye, where the bone curves round. I've got so much going on. Tapping underneath the eye on the bone there. I'm being bombarded with stuff. Tapping on the top lip, and it's really stressing me out. Tapping on the chin. I've got so much on my plate right now. Hand in a fist and tapping on the V. I can't see what to do next. Tapping under the arm. I can't think clearly. Tapping on your head. I've got so much going on in my life. So once you've done a couple of rounds of negative tapping, you then do a round of positive tapping. So keep up with me. Tapping on the eyebrow. I choose to relax now. Side of the eye. I choose to feel calmer now. Under the eye, I choose to surrender now. Top lip, I choose to relax now. Chin, I choose to find some space. Collarbone, I choose to surrender now. Under the arm, I choose to find peace. Top of the head, I choose to relax. Closing your eyes, taking a really nice deep breath in and release. And sense how you feel now.
Thank you, everybody, for joining me into that quick meditation. I yield back to you, Latva.
Thank you so much for that, Jessica. Next, I'm going to pass it to Alec for formation.
Hey everyone, I'm just going to start off with a little bit of an icebreaker. So I want you guys, someone asked me this the other day and I kind of loved it, to think of like an animal. It can be your favorite animal or just an animal that you really like, and imagine that you have a day and you're able to have that animal as like a pet or like be its friend for a day. What would you do with that animal and why? So I'll give you guys some time to think. It can be like whatever animal. I urge you guys to choose something that's not already a pet. So like don't choose like a bunny or a dog. Choose something totally crazy. That's kind of what makes it fun. And then Wafa, we can do breakout rooms or we can just share in here. I don't care. Whatever you think is best.
I think it might be best for breakout rooms. Alyssa, if you can get those ready. Everyone's back. Thank you. So next, we have President Esteban here today to answer some questions. So I'm going to hand it over to him to begin, and then we'll answer questions after.
Okay. Thank you, Alyssa. And again, thank you for inviting me this evening. What I'll do is, because I got quite a few questions in advance, I'll focus on 5 questions, and we kind of grouped them because a number of them were very similar. And I'll answer those 5 questions because I wanted to leave time for you to ask follow-up or additional questions and so on. Because if I just focus on answering the questions, it'd take up all the time, if that works for everyone here. The first question which came up, and there are a number of them related, were was our relationship with the Chicago Police Department Fraternal Order of Police. Right, then this came up in the aftermath of even now I have a difficult time talking about it, but because of the case of police brutality in Minnesota. And it was difficult for me to watch, just like everyone else here. And watching it over and again, I sympathize with, first of all, everyone in the DePaul community. That was not right. And I stand, and DePaul stands with our community in pain, outrage, and share decide to take a stand against police brutality. That's inappropriate, no matter where you live, no matter who you are. Police brutality, any sort of brutality, military, I've seen police and military brutality as well. That's just inappropriate. However, the view we've had at DePaul is that education has to be a big part of trying to make a difference. And while there were calls for us to stop the relationship with the Fraternal Order of Police, you also have to keep in mind the FOP is the union for all police officers in the city of Chicago, the local union. And we have a contract with them which allows for a discount for anyone with the police force to attend classes at DePaul, whether they be, we have a program with them at a undergraduate, master's, and doctoral level. So the undergrad is through continuing professional studies, master's is through the College of Law, and the doctoral program is through the College of Education. We have about 50 such partnerships. They're called the CEO partnership with different organizations throughout Chicago, as well as nonprofits. It's not just for profits. We also work with nonprofits, and we operate them like a cohort. So we provide those discounts. And one of the things about our relationship, our discounts, and the students we get who are police officers, is they're the most diverse group we have on our campus. 25% of the students enrolled to that program are African Americans, and 29% are Latinx students. So over half, 54%, are students from traditionally underrepresented group. So that's who we serve. And we believe that through the DePaul experience, because we ensure that we teach the Vincentian values, you hope to be able to change the way they look at the world. And at DePaul, I mean, I've heard some of the comments about, well, we should exclude this group in particular. DePaul has never been about exclusion. We've always been about inclusion. If you look back at our history, when Catholics and Jews were being denied admission into higher ed because they were Catholics and they were Jews, they happened to be German or Irish. Initially, DePaul was founded to serve that population. And we continue to be an institution of inclusion. Now, we may disagree with the policies of some police officers, but one hopes to change things through education. And that's the goal. We instill our Vincentian values. We hope that a few of our students do become leaders. And change has to occur at the top, right? While we always think it's nice at the grassroots, the tone has to be set at the top. And we're seeing that on a national scale. Without that tone at the top, then it's hard to change a culture in an institution. And that's who we are. But I'd like to tie this in with another question, which talked about the alleged rise of anti-Semitism at DePaul. And I want to reiterate the same message. DePaul is an inclusive place. We agree to disagree on topics, right? But once you get into a threatening environment, once a person feels threatened by a fellow student and so on, we have a process to take care of that. But we also have to be careful and guarded about what constitutes free speech. We have some flexibility because we're a private institution, but we also have a student code of conduct. So for example, when we've had speakers who are controversial on campus, it goes through a committee, which is comprised of people from across campus, and they make a recommendation up or down on whether to invite that person. So we have guidelines for those sorts of things. Right, so going back to the police, our intent is to continue to educate the police officers who are willing to take advantage of a DePaul education, because we believe we can change the minds of the students. I've talked to too many of our graduates who said that, you know what, I went to DePaul because they had this program, but once I learned about the Vincentian mission, once I understood what that meant, it changed what I wanted to do with my life. And if we can't change the hearts of the people we educate, then we're not fulfilling our mission. The next question I wanted to address had to do with Chartwells. And there are a number of variations of this question, whether we're going to be working with Local Union 1, and how does this align with our Vincentian values and mission, and so on. Local Union 1 has a direct working relationship with Chartwells. And I'm assuming everyone knows that Chartwells is a large billion-dollar corporation who contracts with over 300 universities and colleges across the country. So we're one of 300. And the relationship with their workers on each of those campuses is governed by whatever union probably exists on that campus. And we don't have any role in Local Union 1's relationship with Chartwells. We're out of that. We're not consulted about wages or health benefits or any of that. That's between them and Chartwells. Chartwells makes decisions about their employees, not DePaul. Keeping in mind that we had no revenue from dining, very minimal. And typically in a dining establishment, I worked in public higher ed as well as private higher ed was my previous institution. Most of the money is just a pass-through, significant portion, meaning right, you collect money from students, then you pay your provider. So that's typically the relationship. So when there's no money coming in from students, from faculty, staff, visitors, if we're not using them for dining because they cater also on campus, then there is no revenue. So any attempt to say that, well, we should pay for it, where's the money going to come from? It's going to come from somewhere. We're, close to 90% tuition driven? So it's going to have to come from tuition revenue. So that relationship is between the local union and Chartwells. While I sympathize with the Chartwells employees, and I've had good relationships at all the institutions I've been at, because I tend to eat at the calf, so to speak. I also know that Chartwells is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. And if there's anything that needs to be done, it's maybe the students across the 300 plus universities pressuring Chartwells, working with the local unions. But as an institution, we have very little say in those negotiations. The third one I wanted to address was OMSS. Right? And there's this notion that OMSS is the only one that has to deal with budget cuts. The budget cuts are all across campus. And this last round of budget cuts, I did it disproportionately. What did I mean disproportionate? I tried to protect the areas which were student facing. So the area which took the biggest cut in the budget was the president's area. And under my area included athletics, marketing, communications, advancement, and a number of other areas. So that was under the president's office. So from a percentage of total budget, we took the largest cut in the budget. The second highest was under Jeff Bethke, which is he's VP Finance, Administration, and all of that. So he took the second largest as a percentage of the total budget cut. And the third big area, obviously, was that under the provost. And under the provost falls student services, OMSS, and so on. So as a percentage, they took the smallest cut. And that was by design, because those, to me, are the student-facing. So when given a choice, that's what we're going to do. OMSS does have a number of openings. They have 3 staff openings. We just filled the Latinx Cultural Center Coordinator position. And Student Affairs hopes to fill the open positions as soon as it is feasible. What we did last spring is we instituted a hiring freeze. And the reason why we had to do it was we lost all the revenue from housing. Typically, we're full. Just think, we have about 3,000 beds on campus, and we had 0 revenue from that. We had very little revenue from dining because, well, we shut down basically, so we had none. I mean, even now I go on campus, the student center, there's hardly anyone there. Right, so we were preparing because we know we're going to take hits in the budget. We run a tight budget, and the board mandates a certain return, which is 4 to 6%. And this past year, yeah, we had a nice excess over our expenses, but a large chunk of it was we had a longtime donor pass away, and he left us $12.5 million. I can't count on that every single year. And that money was going to a specific college that was earmarked for Driehaus. And we were able to set aside some money so we could do scholarships for students. So even when someone gives us money, sometimes they're very specific as to where it needs to go. So while it looked like we had a nice surplus, yes, we did, a large chunk of it was because of a private gift. It was, I think that was about 30%, close to 30% of the total. So in OMSS, it's obviously, when I say diversity is a priority, the students are priority. That's why we cut the budget the way we did. I do not believe in straight out across the board cuts. The other question I wanted to address was that of tuition and the whole notion of reducing tuition. Our biggest expense are our personnel expenses. And personnel means what? Your faculty, your staff. I mean, that's your biggest expense. It's the cost of instruction, the cost of supporting OMSS. That's our biggest expense. And since our biggest revenue is our tuition, right? Any significant cut in tuitions will just have to cut positions, basically. And we made a commitment. We waited. If you recall, we did budget cuts this past summer based on the recommendation of SRAC. And I think Giselle was still on SRAC when we went through that process. So we made cuts, but that was in anticipation of the projected cuts in auxiliary revenue. Auxiliary revenue is housing, it's dining, it's rental. We have rental property, as you know, in the Loop. Whole Foods is rents their space from us. We have ticket sales and so on. So we did a preemptive, we tried to figure out what that would look like, and we cut. We assumed 70% occupancy in the residence halls. We're at 10% or less than 10%. So we're off that. While we hit our freshman target, we have our largest freshman class in our history, we did not hit our target for transfers and continuing students. So we actually came in below budget for tuition revenue. It was just less than 1%, but right now we're running about 10% below for the winter. And 10%, depending on the discount rate of that student, is anywhere about 20 million, maybe 15, 20 million. That's for the winter. Will we run a deficit for the spring compared to budget? So in our town hall, we said that unless the bottom falls out, In the winter quarter, we do not plan any workforce reduction, at least until the end of the year. Right? But that's our biggest expense. Your classes are still being taught by the same faculty. Right? What we've seen is increased engagement in some of the other areas. I know Mission Ministry has reported, for example, even something as simple as a retreat. They've increased their attendance. A lot of the events, we're seeing slight upticks in attendance, participation. I get a weekly report on what it looks like for some of these engagement activities. And we started tracking that for the spring because we wanted to learn from the spring quarter and try and make changes for the fall. And even now as we speak, I've already heard from Alyssa and a number of you about the workload being handed out by faculty and how it's more intense than in person because some of the dynamics that happen. So that's been heard. I shared it with the provost who shared it with academic council and trying to be more consistent. For example, if in the syllabus it says Mondays when we have synchronous learning, then that's what we're going to do. So we've had that discussion. We're continuing to look at how we do things and try and improve it. While the loss of, while not charging for the student athletic fee and all the other fees, because you're not in person, may not seem like a lot from a budgetary standpoint, that's a big hit also, because we rely on that unless we start laying off people in those areas. So let me see. And that's why for our mini campaign, we identified 5 support areas. One is scholarships, emergency funds. We had a mini campaign last spring for the Student Emergency Fund. Typically, in a typical year, academic year, the budget for that fund is $35,000 to $40,000. Last year, for the spring quarter alone, I think we handed out $545,000 to over 570, I believe, students. And we had to do a mini campaign for that. We supplemented it with our operating budget, and we added money to the Vincentian Fund as well. So that's another priority, mental health. We know a lot of our students and faculty and staff are suffering from mental health issues, so that became a priority. Technology, and I saw one of the concerns was we have students who don't have access to Wi-Fi and so on. One of the things we did, based on what we learned in the spring, was we opened the residence halls to students who do not have a safe living environment, who do not have access to either a computer and or a secure Wi-Fi connection, stable Wi-Fi. So you can apply to stay in a residence hall. And I was just talking to Gene in cabinet today, and they actually are not, we thought we'd have 500-600, and it doesn't look like we'll get anywhere close to 400 actually, but that's available. But we're also purchasing computers, so you have to go to financial aid if you need help in that area. And the fifth thing was internships. So the Now We Must campaign, which was launched by this year to help students this year and into next year, those were the 5 areas. And I was just talking with our VP for enrollment management earlier. And I said I have some cash from donors. It's a few $100,000, but I said let's see if we can help some rising sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And I'll leave it to his office to figure out through financial aid as to how to disperse it. So we're taking steps to help students as much as we can. You're not the only ones hurting. I mean, we have our alumni are hurting. I mean, it's a whole country that's hurting because of the loss of jobs. And those were the 4. I mean, there were questions about sustainability, environmental, and that was a priority. and it continues to be a priority. We've been adding solar panels left and right. I think any new building since 2000, we have either a rooftop garden. I mean, we try and make it as green as we can. Last year, we added solar panels to Ozanam Hall, 240 of them. We compost the food from the cafeteria, among others. There are questions about COVID testing and why we aren't open. When we looked at opening for this fall quarter, the current one we're in, one of the biggest challenges was the availability of test kits. There was a limited number of test kits which would be available for us, and it would not be sufficient to test 22,000 students and all the faculty and staff. Another question is, how often do you test students? And as borne out, it was the right call to make with outbreaks and death on other campuses. So once there's a sound strategy on testing, and we work with the City of Chicago, Department of Public Health, we have our own medical advisors. We work with Amita Health. We have internal experts as well. And once they say, okay, we can do this, then we're going to move forward. Like everyone else, I'd rather be in person. My job requires me to meet people in person. So with that, I'd like to open it to questions.
Thank you. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions, just raise your hand and I will call on people to see the hands up. Alec, I see your hand first.
Hi, President Esteban.
Hi.
I am Alec. I'm the senator for first-year students.
Yeah.
I have been hearing a lot about accommodations for students with disability, not just specific for folks who have already set up something, but campus-wide accommodations. So, like captions,
closed caption.
Like closed captions on lectures, and just other things that for folks who maybe don't have, or maybe not diagnosed, or maybe not have a specific disability that needs accommodations, but just overall campus-wide. Do you know what's being done, especially in first-year classes, to make these accommodations as accessible as possible?
Yeah. Obviously, the first step is, you go to the Center for Students with Disabilities. You want to continue to work with them. The closed captioning is I thought this would have been a fairly straightforward solution, but there's not enough closed captioners out there who can do the work for us, because you're looking at, we had 4,400 classes roughly in the fall quarter, and we're exploring the use of AI just so it could be done automatically. The AI software available right now, they're not geared for college classes. It's the biggest challenge. So we're continuing CTL, and the Center for Students with Disability are trying to figure out if there's a way we can use even I guess not the best, it's not the best, but AI captioning and build it into our Zoom systems moving forward. So that's being done. But currently research shows that that's really problematic for college level courses. And we're also doing more training for our faculty with the Center for Students with Disabilities, so they know how to handle. So we're attacking it from a number of ways. Faculty, we still encourage students, obviously. And we're increasing training for faculty by working with departments actually at departmental level. And that's a big thing. Thank you for the question, Alec. And it was in the list, but I had like 15 questions, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. Next hand
Thank
up
you,
was
Alec.
Leslie's.
Hello.
Hi,
Hope you're
Wesley.
doing good tonight. I want to talk a little bit more about Chartwells just because there's a number of us in this room who've been pretty active with it. And I kind of, one of my favorite quotes from St. Vincent de Paul is that love is inventive to infinity. And I think you express it, you do sympathize with the workers, and you do, perhaps you might not go as far as love, perhaps you will, whatever. But it's something that you do care about, and you care about what they're doing. And I think love can be empowered a lot by our creativity. And sometimes we might just think, maybe it's an institution beyond what our easy or simple or obvious answer might be of like, well, we're not involved with the relationship between Chartwell's and the union, so we can't do anything. But I mean, I might be correct, and perhaps you can answer a little bit about this, but as far as I know, the contract that we have, that DePaul has with Chartwell's, is it up for expiration or is up for renewal in the next couple of years? Is this going to play into the consideration in terms of how they treat their workers at all? And do you think there could be student input on terms of how we make this contract, or in part of it? I don't know if that could be as much, but I really think that could be something important, especially with how important the student voice has been on this.
Yeah, we can take that into consideration with the new contract, keeping in mind that if there's going to be clauses for example, if the next pandemic hits, you have to guarantee employment for X number of months, right? All Chartwells is going to do is build it into the cost, right? So that's as long as people going in understand, they're a private business, they're not a nonprofit such as us, but you can build certain things into your contract. And that's something which I've actually had discussion with Jeff Bethke, who's unfortunately leaving us. We've had that discussion already, just so you know. So that's something which we'll mull over. But I also want to go into it because, on the other hand, I get hit because the cost of attendance keeps going up, which I have to weigh that versus that. But yeah, we can always look at it moving forward. It's a lot more challenging to do this thing when you have something set in stone already. So yeah, so Wesley, yeah, we can take that into consideration.
Thank you. Next question is Zoe's.
Hi,
Hey, Zoe.
I'm the senator for the theater school.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
A lot of one of the big questions that I've heard thrown around by a lot of my classmates is, I know that there's a possibility that we'll be in person next year. At least that's the hope. And if that's true, what does that mean for TTS performances, and also, you know, acting classes and other stuff involves us being in really close proximity to each other? I know that you're not, you know, in charge of the theater school, so that's kind of a different, but
when you say next year, what do you mean next year? Like in the winter quarter?
next school year,
Oh,
yeah.
next fall 2021.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, right now, for planning purposes, we're assuming that fall 21 there'll be a vaccine and treatments will be better and we'll be able to meet all in person. I mean, that's the hope. Whether or not that's reality is a whole different thing. There's some promising developments in terms of vaccines. But I'm not going to be first in line. I tell you the truth for a vaccine. And even if it was totally safe, I think we should take care of the elderly first. I think we should take care of the healthcare workers. Those who are high risk are the ones we should take care of. I mean, I'm considered a moderate high risk, but I'd give up my slot for someone else because of a number of reasons. But we're hoping, I mean, right now we're planning to be fully in person for the fall, assuming certain things happen.
Just to clarify really quickly, so is there a possibility that, so, you know, in theaters, like in spaces, there are a lot of people kind of crammed into a space. So is there a possibility that in fall 2021, we might all be back in classes but not be doing performances? Is that like a possibility?
Well, if we're going to be, my guess is if we're in person, like we would in a normal academic year, then we'd probably be in person, I mean, performances in theater as well. And actually, when we were planning for this fall, when the positivity rate in Chicago had gone down, we were planning all of this in June. We were already talking about how do we handle theater, right? Should our theater students have face masks and a face shield? How far apart should they be? Should we all do just monologues in theater? What about so that was already being planned for this fall, right? And I know there was a question about CDM and being back at CDM and so on, in CineSpace in particular. Is anyone who's from CDM here? Okay. I know there's great value to being on site at CineSpace. Okay. Right now, our students in film, for example, they can check out the machines the cameras and so on. That's still ongoing, CineSpace as well as in the Loop campus. And I know because Alex Picios, the owner of CineSpace, is a friend of mine. He and his wife and my wife, we go out dinner on occasion. And we were just at dinner last month, and he was sharing with me that some of the films, Chicago Fire, Hope, and PD are already shooting at CineSpace. But what they did, Dick Wolf, the producer, is they have a lab on site. And that's their testing. They created their own bubble and so on. So I'm trying to see if there's a way we can be included in that bubble, just so our students can have access. But that, again, being in a bubble means you're in a bubble. You have to stay put among others and so on. So I know I shared that with Dean Miller of CDM. And I just said, if I need to intervene or get involved, just let me know and I'll give Alex a call. Because Alex wants to work with us, obviously. He values us as a partner. So we'll try and find workarounds with a lot of these things. It might not be ideal, but just like everyone else, we're all suffering.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zoe.
Thank you. Next question is for Francesca.
Hi, Francesca.
Hi, President Esteban. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us. We all really appreciate it, especially during this interesting world we're living in. I really appreciate how much attention and numbers you've been giving us, particularly on like the way that budget cuts have been going and the financials of the institution. I am just curious in terms of the school and the administration being completely transparent. You know, what is being done to like publish these reports and give us like, because it's really hard for us as students to assess the situation when you're throwing out numbers to us, but we don't understand the context of those numbers. We're not seeing it all. And I think that you'll find that perhaps with a little bit more transparency with the release of those full numbers and everything, people will be more receptive to the actions that you're taking.
Okay, institutional research has quite a few numbers, enrollment, and all of that. Those are all required. As a nonprofit, we're required to file what's called a Form 990. And you can just Google DePaul Form 990. We do audited financial statements and all of that. There's a lag in reporting, but that's a IRS regulation. So all of that information, salaries for top officers are there. So a lot of information is there. I mean, before I take any job, and when I took the job at my previous institution, before I accepted the job, I went into it because I wanted to see what compensation was. Oh, GuideStar was bought by someone else. I saw a GuideStar pop up. They're bought by someone else, or they merged with someone else. I'm not sure what they're called now. But that's all publicly available. So any nonprofit, Loyola is going to be there, Marquette, all our Big East counterparts, any institution, Georgetown, you name it, Boston College, Harvard. So all of that information is there, financial statements. So that's all public knowledge. And institutional research also has a lot of information. The government, IPEDS, we're required to submit information on ethnicity, everything. I mean, there's quite a bit of data. When I want data on other institutions, that's where I go because I like to try and look for data on my own. And when we do some of the state of the university and town halls, I actually did a town hall with students, and I was deeply disappointed. We invited parents and students to a town hall this past summer. I had 1,200, I think about 1,200 parents show up, and just over 200 students show up out of the 22,000. And the parents were there. They asked a whole lot of questions, and we tried to answer as much as we can. Right? So whenever there's opportunities like that, but that's all, Francesca, that's where I go. I go to the 990s, and also iPads is another great source if you can't find it on our institutional research website.
Okay, thank you. In terms of when the decisions are happening, though, I was just wondering about like if things are ever addressed before decisions are made, or if it's always going to be like after the fact.
There's a committee called the Strategic Resource Allocation Committee, and it's comprised of 9 members, and they make recommendations to me with regards to budget. And Alyssa is going to be on that committee. So there's one representative from student, one from staff. I think there's 3 from faculty, so that's 5. There's typically a dean. I mean, Jeff Bethke, Selma Ganem, the provost, EVP are going to be there as well. So, and my chief of staff sits in as the representative.
Yeah, we love Strega and SGA. We've actually been talking quite a bit about trying to get more student representation on that. So,
so do faculty. They want more representation, and staff will want more representation. It's hard. I mean, the more people you have, the more challenging it becomes to have a meeting. And I think the biggest concern I heard from the last time SRAC was put together, when faculty had more representatives than they typically have, is that a number of other members, including I think this, the SGA president, staff council president, and some other people were intimidated or did not feel that they could speak openly with so many faculty voices.
Oh, yeah.
So the goal is going to be we just keep it as it had been before we added faculty, because then everyone is going to want to add more people. So it works. Yeah.
And I'm assuming that then goes to the Board of Trustees. Sorry, I appreciate you walking me through this.
Yeah. So the SRAC looks at all the data. They have all information on what enrollment looks like, because we're tracking fall enrollment already. And fall enrollment applications for admissions is down significantly, double-digit down. So we're trying to drum out. If you don't have enough applications, you won't have enough deposits and so on, even if they're admitted. So they look at all the data we have, look at our budget, what our fixed expenses are, and so on. So they get all the financial information. So this is obviously confidential because our competitors could also use it against it. So they have access to a lot of information. Then they make recommendations based on the data they have, based on the expected revenues, expected expenses, and they see what the difference is. If there's a shortfall in revenues, then they'll have to say we need to cut X% out of the budget. They make a recommendation to me as president. I review it, and then it goes to the finance. I endorse it. I either say yes or no. And if I say yes, it goes to the finance committee of the board. Now, the finance committee of the board sets certain parameters in terms of how we manage our budget. One of the goals is to have a 4% net operating margin. Right? So if your net revenue, net tuition and so on, is 500 million, then you want about 20 million. And why do you want that? It's in case you don't hit your targets for revenue or expenses. If you're familiar with the MAP money, Monetary Assistance Program money, which is a state equivalent of Pell, every year we get about 18 million from them. For 2 years, we didn't have a budget. Illinois didn't have a budget. So we had to set aside money because we said we wanted to cover it. Right? We got rid of the set aside with this year's budget already, just to make sure the budget matched. So that means if the state all of a sudden says, I can't give you your MAP money, we either tell the students, sorry, no MAP money, or we do what we did before. We say, okay, we're going to guarantee your MAP money for this year. Then we'll have to find $18 million in our budget. That's why you want that margin of about 4 or 6%. It's just like you don't spend, if once you get to work, you don't spend every dime you bring in. Even as a student, if you're working part-time, you don't try and spend every money you bring in. If you can, you try and save a little bit, especially if we're working full-time, right? And that's the same principle in with us, because we have no backup. There's no one we can run to. People talk about the endowment, but a large percentage, a significant percentage of the endowment is actually specified for a specific purpose. It might be scholarships, it might be endowed professorship, it might be for this, that. So you really can't take the money and say, no, I'll use it for this instead. If you're not using it for the purpose it was designated, you will have to ask permission from the donor if they allow you, right? And if I was giving money to an institution and I say I want it for scholarships, and you come to me and say I want it to pay a staff salary, I can say right now I'm going to say no. I want it for a scholarship. That's why I set it up. So.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna give some time for other folks.
Thank you. And just for future, so I know some people raise their
Yeah.
hands a second time. If you have more than one question, raise your hand a second time, but I want to get through everyone that hasn't spoken first, and then you'll go after that. So next is Jessica.
Hi, President
Jessica.
Esteban.
Hi,
My name
how are
is
you?
Jessica. I am the SGA Center for Mission and Ministry. I'm also the president of Kalahi, the Pulse Filipino Club. I had a question regarding the mission statement revision process. And 2 weeks ago, Father Memo and the rest of the team joined our SGAGB to just ask for feedback, and the whole SGA and the general student body have been very active in that process. And I was told that this is the first year that this process is like participatory.
Yep.
So again, I wonder if, since it is participatory, will there be a student representative present in the space, or like in the Board of Trustees meeting, wherein this statement revision will finally be finalized, or will we get a chance to like give a feedback again before it is finalized?
Father Memo is in charge of that. And I hate to say this, but we haven't talked all the way through process at the very end. But students have always, we've invited students in the past to mission and the mission committee meeting. We invited students in the past to academic affairs because student services is there. And Alyssa attends the public meetings of the board. So in terms of specific steps Father Memo is going to taking it to the board, we haven't had that discussion yet. But he is correct in that in the past, input was not widely solicited. But I'm a firm believer in soliciting, hearing to as many voices. And if someone disagrees with the decision made, that's fine. My philosophy is if it's my neck on the line, I'm going to make the call because I won't blame a committee for any of the decisions which ultimately fall onto me. But I believe in listening. But I also know that there may be a time when I have to say, you know what, I have to make a decision. So I applaud, I encouraged Father Memo when he approached me about it. I said, do you really want to do this in a Zoom environment your first year? But he gladly took up the challenge. So I told him I'd support him any way he can. But yeah, Jessica, so yeah, you can ask in your next meeting, or I can mention it to Father Memo. That's no big deal. I was supposed to have dinner with him last night, but he was busy.
Yeah, I would appreciate that, President Esteban, if you bring it up. I can also send him an email. Thank you.
Thank you. Send him an email, then he can talk to me about it. Yeah.
Thank you. Next question is Johnny.
Hi there, my name is Johnny Milas. I am
Hi,
the
Johnny.
senator for 4th and 5th year students.
Uh-huh.
And my question is for on-campus classes and on-campus, just going to the facilities, all you have to do is show the Campus Cleared app. I'm curious, why aren't temperatures being taken? I've gone to restaurants and they've taken them there.
Yeah. We've had this discussion in the campus reopening, and Giselle was involved in this about temperature checks and all that. How would I put this? In the student demographic, you tend to be asymptomatic, and temperature check, it really doesn't catch the majority of people. There's some talk about it being more theater than it is useful in some senses. And I know, I mean, I was in the hospital just recently, and they didn't do a temperature check on me, which was kind of fascinating. And I'm not sure if you know this, but at hospitals, they don't test the nurses, they don't test the physicians. And they only test medical care workers if they show symptoms, which shocked me. I would have thought, of all people, they'd be tested regularly. So we had this discussion, and the conclusion drawn by the committee, including the experts, was it doesn't prove anything. So the decision was made not to go down that road, but instead focus on, and that's the same with the testing which we looked at. Because even the presidents I talked to who are going to do testing, they said, oh, they were going to test once a week or twice a week. So I said, are they only going to go to school once or twice a week then? What happens the rest of the time? Because you can be infected the moment you walk off campus, and you may not show symptoms till 2-3 days later. Right? And I've been tested 2-3 times already. Yeah, but that was the rationale. It would be great for theater was the term I heard used in one of the discussions. So there was a COVID task force which helped shut us down, and there was a campus reopening. So they were the ones who made the recommendation on this, and I couldn't see any reason why we should do the temperature checks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll have to leave in about 5 minutes. So.
Okay, cool. We could probably get through one or two more. The next one is Sonal. I hope I said that right.
Yeah, you said it correctly. It's Sonal. Hi, Mr. President. Thank you for being here with us. So you did touch on this earlier, and I did just have a follow-up question. So last Monday, the DePaul Center of Ethnic Studies did hold a lecture.
Oh, I lost.
And it was titled Nation Building by Design, Representations of a Zionist Landscape at a World's Fair Lecture. And a lot of students expressed opposition to this lecture because they felt that it pushed the Zionist agenda, and I quote, someone wants to know why a straight up Zionist was allowed to present on campus, end quote. So my question for you is, do you think that it was appropriate to hold that lecture? And if so, do you believe that there should be space on campus to include Zionist lecturers and their experience?
Was it a class?
So it wasn't a class, but it was a guest lecture held by the DePaul Department of Ethnic Studies, and it was available for registration to the DePaul students and faculty.
If it was a departmental sponsored or a faculty sponsored, then you get into academic freedom. Right?
So it was a guest lecturer from an actual university in Israel, and it was hosted by the Department of Ethnic Studies, so it wasn't an internal guest lecturer, it was someone external.
Yeah. I mean, faculty have, in terms of academic freedom, faculty have been historically allowed to bring guest lecturers, whoever they seem fit, as long as, I mean, yeah. So that's a academic freedom.
That there was a guest panel committee that helps to monitor who exactly gets chosen. So is it up to this guest panel committee, or then is it up to the individual?
No, the panel I referred to, the panel refers to university-wide, university-sponsored, not associated with any academic unit or a faculty member per se.
So I guess I'm just confused because what differentiates a university-sponsored lecture and then a faculty-sponsored lecture?
If there's not a academic unit which is sponsoring it, we've had student groups, for example, sponsor speakers.
I understand, but this wasn't a student group. This was, again, hosted by the DePaul Department of Ethnic Studies.
Yeah, so that's a academic matter, and that falls squarely under academic freedom of that department.
And so my question to you is, do you believe that there should be space on campus to include Zionist lectures and their experiences?
And my response is, with a faculty or departmental. I mean, that's where you host those sorts of things. If there's a concern. Now, if you have a concern personally, you write to the department. Right? But
Yeah, and so I do write to the
wait,
department.
but the thing is this. The one thing which concerns me in some of the things I hear across campus is that it's okay to have one speaker but not another. And there's a strong desire to censor one speaker versus another. And who's supposed to make that call? Having lived under a totalitarian regime, authoritarian regime, where there was no freedom of speech, and you could not voice any opinion one way or another, and the provost lived under another authoritarian regime in Egypt, where again dissent was suppressed. I have very strong feelings, I'd have to say, about freedom to speak, among others. Now, there's a line you cross with hate speech, among others. And if that's part, then we have a process to go through that. And the differentiation between a academic sponsored speech and a university is university would include anything if SGA wants to bring a speaker, right? And it's deemed as maybe being controversial. That has to go. If the Democrats on campus or Republicans on campus want to bring a speaker and it's deemed as maybe controversial, that goes to that panel. If a faculty member wants to bring a speaker on campus, then they bring a speaker on campus. Now, if the faculty member or department feels that that might cause, there may need a security, I've provided security for faculty as provost because the topic was controversial. So there's a clear distinction between rights of academic freedom and the rights of faculty, departments, or colleges. College sponsors a speaker. And if a university is not a place to have a dialogue, among other things, then where else are you supposed to have this dialogue? I was questioned once for, we had a controversial speaker, Charles Murray, who was brought to campus, and the panel signed off on it. And I was questioned by it at a meeting. And my response was this. First of all, I disagree with him. But as a faculty member, what I would do is I'd read every book he's written. I'd read his source material for his research. And as a faculty member, what I would do then is I'll prepare a rebuttal through a series of questions. And when Q&A comes, then I'll ask my questions. I'll say, you said A, B, C, D. I disagree because of X, Y, Z. But this is where we're supposed to have this discussion. It's not about shutting people out. It's not saying, I don't agree with you, so you can't speak. There are a lot of people I disagree with. Okay? There are a lot of officials I disagree with. But unless you can have that dialogue, unless you can at least say, you know what, I'll listen to you, but then you'll have to listen to me.
Okay. Okay, cool. And President Esteban, do you believe in Zionism?
What do you mean by Zionism?
I mean, do you believe in the liberation of Palestine?
I believe that and I'll say this as a Catholic, the way I was brought up and the way I read our mission is to believe in the dignity of every person. That's unequivocal. It has to be every person. I don't care if you're Palestinian, Israeli, if you're a Filipino, Chinese. I don't care the color of your skin. I believe in the dignity of every person. Right? Now, I may not agree with every person, but all of us have the God. If you look at the teachings of St. Vincent de Paul, it's about the dignity of every person. We should see God in every person we meet. And that's actually the toughest part. Being able to forgive people, being able to look beyond who they are, who they might represent. And yeah, there are going to be people who I really, really don't think I can get along with for one reason or another. Then I avoid getting along with them. I try and listen to them, but if I still disagree, I disagree. And if they run for office, I won't vote for them. Right? I vote with conscience. I vote on the basis of issues, not on the basis of anything else. So,
okay, so
yeah.
just so I have that right, you don't directly support Zionism. However, you do believe that there should be spaces on campus for Zionist conversations.
I believe that at a university, there should be spaces to have difficult conversations. If it's not going to be in the university, are you going to have it where at work? Are you going to have it on the streets? That's why if you look at some of the earliest universities, they tended to be Catholic. And it was because they wanted to encourage the interplay of ideas. Because there was a lot of suppression of ideas. Whenever you have revolutions around the world, who are the first to get executed, rounded up? It's going to be the intellectuals. It's going to be university professors. It's going to be those who have college educations. Country after country, if you look at the history of authoritarian regimes, the first people they're going to get rid of are those who have college educations, because we're supposedly the free thinkers. We're the ones who can think for ourselves, right? And if we say, no, we're not going to listen to you because we disagree with you, then why? Does that person not have a right then to exist? Is that the message I'm hearing? Okay. If we are Vincentian, if we believe in the mission of DePaul, then we have to believe in the dignity of everyone, especially those who are marginalized. Otherwise, we're not living our mission. Right? Because who are the marginalized? Different groups. The DACA right now are marginalized, especially now. I mean, African Americans. You have different groups who are marginalized. So we have to look at them and treat them because they're God's gift to us. Right? That's why we structure our scholarships a certain way.
Okay, I think I understand everything that I intended to set out here with that question. Thank you, President.
Thank you.
President Esteban, I know you have to go, so
Yeah.
I just want to thank you on behalf of all of us for coming and answering questions today. We really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you again.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. Have a nice night.
Have a good evening.
Don't have a good one.
Okay, so next on the agenda, I'm going to pass this to Kelsey because I know there was a little confusion about voting last week when we were doing CRB. So Kelsey was hoping to kind of clarify some of those confusions because we're going to be voting on a couple other things tonight too.
Yeah, thank you, Wafa. I was just going to ask very quickly before I jump in, if we could all just like take a deep breath together and just have a beat after that. Just, yeah, thank you all. So just in terms of voting, I don't want like the concept of how we vote in SGA to be a confusing entity at all. I want that to be the easiest part of the voting process. I want you to just think about what we're voting on and that's the only thing on your mind. So I just wanted to provide clarification about like the ways that you can vote. So we have like the aye or the yes and like the nay or the no. The formality of like the way that you phrase it doesn't really matter to me personally, but yes and no, those are fairly obvious. But I just want to make the sort of clarification between if you vote present or abstain and what that means, because I know that can be like a confusing, weird, especially if you hear it and you're like, wait, I could do that? What does that mean? So just for clarification, I guess, if you're going to vote, if you're going to abstain from a vote, you should typically only do that if you have a sort of conflict of interest with what we're voting on. You could just vote abstain if you don't, but I wouldn't recommend it. That's sort of what voting present is for. But the main distinction is that when you're voting abstain, you're not counted in our voting tally. And that's important because if you're voting present, that means that you're also not taking a side. But if, let's say I were to count the vote and we're a tie between yes and no, and one person voted present, you may have heard the phrase soft no. That would mean that the motion would not pass. So if if you're thinking about that when you vote, just know that that's what voting present can mean in terms of our votes. I hope that might have been a little bit less confusing. Next time we vote, I'll throw sort of that in the chat again so you can see it visually, but did that help? I sort of, for clarification's sake, for knowing what your options are. Theoretically, there are some other ways that we can vote, but I think that it's just better to wait until we get to a circumstance where that happens, because that's way more rare. Yeah, so does anyone have any questions about that or anything before we move on to stuff that we're going to be probably voting on tonight?
So sorry to interrupt, but I am going to dip. I wanted to say thank you all for hosting this. I loved it. And if anyone has any comments about what I had questioned the president about, I did drop my email in the chat. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to hear your comments, questions, whatever. Anonymity can be offered as I'm writing an article about this for the DePaulia. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there. Thank you all. Much respect. Have a great night.
You're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kelsey, as well. Before we move on to the voting, I think we need to like just take a break. And if we could pause the recording too and just kind of cool. Just for some context, next we're going to talk about the resolution concerning end of the quarter grading for fall 2020. So some context, there was a similar resolution passed by Faculty Council last quarter in spring due to the demands of students. Specifically, I believe Strong DePaul, the organization, brought this up and asked for other students and other student organizations to stand in solidarity with them after the murder of George Floyd, and like just chaos around the country. And it was really distracting students from like the expectation for students to focus on schoolwork was unreasonable. And so given the current political climate, we would like to ask for Faculty Council to adopt the resolution again. Watfa and I had a meeting with Faculty Council President Scott Paith and also Provost, Salma, I believe, Ghanem. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your last name. Okay, cool, great. And we brought up student concerns who have already reached out to us saying like we would really appreciate a resolution or like a grading policy similar to last quarter, just because right now it's very, very overwhelming. Like I really feel that. I feel like extremely drained right now, and I know so many other students do as well. And so let me share my screen. This is the resolution. Sorry, I didn't finish what I was starting to say. I'm telling you, my mind's all over the place. But we brought it up, and basically it got not necessarily shut down. It was brought to Faculty Council officers first to see if we could fit their agenda for Wednesday. We did not fit their agenda for Wednesday. And so it kind of just died there. And Watfa and I decided that we weren't happy with that, so we wanted to pass a resolution showing our support for passing this end of the quarter grading policy and kind of pressuring Faculty Council to adopt this, just because sorry, I'm trying to share my screen and talk at the same time, and I don't think it's working for me. But let me know if you guys can see my screen. I'm so confused. You guys can someone, sorry, I can't see you guys.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
We can see it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I'm sorry that also like this is like kind of last minute and also on top of like election week, just because it's already week 9 and we really want to get this out as soon as we can. So this is the resolution. Hopefully some of you guys have had time to read through it already. If not, I will keep my screen up like this and just tell me if you guys need some time to read through it, and I can also scroll down as well. But basically this just mimics the same sentiment as the resolution passed by Faculty Council last quarter. Alyssa, I see a hand up. Are we taking questions now or after? Okay. We can take hands on now. Sorry, like that came out weird.
but yeah, and then we're still in open discussion and everything. Okay, so I don't know the order, but I see David's hand.
Hello again. I was actually thinking about this yesterday, and I was thinking perhaps we could ask that the university permanently make election day a university holiday and have the university be officially closed, such that nothing can be due and no classes can be on that day. I know that there's a lot of movement to have like it be a holiday for people voting, like for like business being closed. Sorry, great quick guy. But having it be somewhat formal, like look at the university calendar and it's like such and such holiday, university closed. If it was a university holiday, formally speaking, that could be cool. I don't know exactly what that entails. Also, I can't really read the resolution to this page, but so there might be something in there about that. But that was something I thought that I had yesterday that relates to.
Cool. Thank you for bringing that up. I think that's a great idea. I do think, however, that would be through a different resolution or through a different channel of some sort. I just really want to make sure that this is specifically focusing on grading. But I think we can talk about that and have a different conversation about that, just because also this is really urgent and hopefully it passes. But I see Mariana's hand next.
I just have sort of a question and a comment, I guess, in one. But I noticed at the top, your first initial statement was the election, the ongoing pandemic, and civil unrest. And then most of the resolution does, from what we've seen, because there's more on the bottom, but most of it does focus on the election. But I would also like to point out that like the coronavirus rates are going back up, and a lot of people are losing their jobs once again because there are more the word restrictions being put in place once again, which creates a lot more pressure. The announcement comes of this week and last week where people are finding out whether or not, our restaurant workers, our students who are back in like Chicago once again, thinking that it would be safe for them to return for school. So I think I would just, in my opinion, and I don't know if this can be like come into fruition, but I think that the pandemic should still be, I know it was the main issue for March and the resolution and part of the resolution that came in June as well, but I think it should also be heavily emphasized here as well, because we are still in a pandemic. We might still be next year. And just because there's not going to be election in winter quarter or spring quarter, like if we are still in a pandemic, that is something that the administration still had to take into account no matter what as well. So I think that more emphasis on that could potentially be beneficial.
I think also, sorry, I didn't fully explain the conversation with faculty council and the provost, faculty council president and the provost, because the reasoning behind the resolution passed in the spring 2020 quarter was specific. It didn't really have to do with the pandemic. It specifically had to do with the murder of George Floyd. And so because it was unexpected, that's what brought them to write this resolution. And so I completely agree, though. We can definitely edit that once we move into discussion and just emphasize the effects of the pandemic. But I just also wanted to provide some context that their main reasoning was not the pandemic.
Yeah. You mean the June one, right?
Was it June? Yeah, it was spring. Yeah, the end of spring quarter. June.
I remember there was also, I completely agree. And I validate 100% what you're saying. And I know that's exactly what that was for. But also for the March one, there wasn't a published resolution, but a lot of professors took into account the pandemic and basically canceled a lot of the finals based off of that or changed it up because of that. So I'm not sure if that's has to do with anything, but I know this is going to be an ongoing issue for a lot longer, especially when he didn't have an answer for, I think, Zoe, when she asked about next year. And so I don't know. I feel like that is still a big issue that administration should take into account. Because if the university is suffering and everyone is suffering, yes, the students are twofold suffering because we have responsibilities within the institution that the administration does not have deadlines every week. So
Definitely. So I think we can, if you'd like, make a motion once we move to discussion about editing that. I think that'd be great. I see Nisa's hand next.
I'm gonna wait till discussion actually.
Okay, beautiful. Are there any other hands? I can't really see everyone. And yeah.
I have a hand question clarification. To go off of Mariana's point, I know when it was mentioned in terms of like the pandemic, the response wasn't really that in favor because faculty have supposedly made adjustments. So like kind of how you mentioned, like some faculty have been like more understanding and like lenient when it comes to like the pandemic in particular. But I don't know how they're like responding to the election. I know my classes have proceeded completely as normal as if nothing's happening, but I know when it comes to like COVID, they've been more receptive for whatever reason. I don't know what makes that much of a difference, but they were more receptive to it being COVID than the elections.
Cool. I see Cindy's hand.
I just wanted to say, like, can we motion to move it to discussion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Cool.
Thank you, Bertha. The next thing we're gonna do today is go over, so we did CRB last week and we tabled a couple of things, but we're gonna go over one of the things we tabled, which was the recording of meetings. So Elsa, are you able to share your screen for that too? Thank you. So CRB met and we kind of decided to bring it back without any changes, just because we were really set on it being this way. And I wanted everyone to everyone on CRB was going to go through and explain what our reasoning was for that. But because I'm going to join discussion on this, I'm going to hand it over to Ari to chair. So Ari will be the chair, but I guess we'll just go in order of people on CRB. I'll go first and I'll hand it to Johnny. But I know our reasoning was it wasn't really like worth sacrificing the safety of students and stuff just to record, like to be transparent. I think at the point where we're like, oh well, what if we do this instead of this? Like we're really gambling with the safety of students, and that was kind of where we drew the line and just agreed it might be safest to not have it at all. But yeah.
Before I speak, can we get a motion to move to discussion? Or I'll motion to move to discussion.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Cool.